My name is Mara Ellery, 30 years old. There is a particular kind of humiliation that arrives in a whisper, not the loud crash of a plate breaking or a shout that rattles glass, just the quick, dismissive sentence tossed across a table and followed by the quiet click of a wine glass on linen. That's what I remember most, the sound it made when the night tilted. I'd spent 5 months building this evening like a bridge I hoped we could all cross. I cut everything to make it happen. No new shoes. Canceled my gym membership. Cooked in instead of ordering out. I even turned down overtime so I wouldn't show up to the dinner, smelling like a factory line, and regret. The restaurant was the kind with a maitre d' who remembers your face, even if it's only because you moved heaven and a few credit limits to make sure he would. Private room. Chef's tasting built around my father's favorite off-menu dishes, the ones he'd brag about when he was in a generous mood. 3 bottles of my mother's Cabernet already decanting like a promise. Dessert with the exact texture my brother Jason once admitted made him feel like a king. An entire night curated to feel like something they would remember kindly, something that would, for once, make me visible. I had a second surprise, too. The real one. 2 dark blue boxes with gold trim sat in my dresser at home, like small, sleeping stars. Inside each, a sapphire and diamond watch, custom, engraved, beautiful. My parents used to stop at a window when we were kids, stare at that exact pair until fog bloomed on the glass. They'd say, "Someday." The backs were engraved. "For every second you gave me." It had felt poetic when I ordered it, maybe a little naive, but all gifts are naive until they land in the right hands. They showed up on time and dressed like a version of our family I recognized only in photographs. Mom's lipstick matched the wine. Dad's tie matched the menu. Jason wore the expensive indifference he's been practicing since middle school. We sat. We said the lines. The food arrived. For a moment, I believed the night might do what I paid it to do, soften the edges. Halfway through the main course, Jason lifted his glass. His grin was a little too sharp to be friendly. Guess even strays can pay sometimes. The words didn't hit like a slap. They eroded like salt dough's iron. First a sting, then the slow, undeniable collapse of something you thought was sturdy. Dad chuckled as if he'd been tipped. Mom kept eating, the fork moving like it was in a different scene. Jason leaned back, admiring his own timing. I looked at all 3 of them and understood I had mistaken seating charts for belonging. I stood, slid my coat over my shoulders, and said calmly, "You'll have to pay for your own celebration. I'm the stray, remember?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't even glance toward the kitchen where the pastry chef would already be checking the set of the custard I wouldn't stay to taste. I walked out through the main dining room, past the mural that's supposed to make everyone feel grander than they are, past a couple on their first date laughing too loudly, down a hallway that smelled like truffles and money. In the lobby, I gave the manager my name. "Reverse the prepayment," I said. "Please present the bill to the table." He blinked, professional concern sliding into place, then nodded. "Of course, Ms. Ellery." 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with a message from the manager. Refund processed. Bill delivered, $4,216, including gratuity. Then the night turned into a strobe of numbers. Dad, Mom, Jason, Dad again. Voicemail after voicemail until my phone looked like a crime scene. 72 missed calls by midnight. I put it face down. The city outside my window blinked its 1,000 indifferent eyes. I watched them until dawn. They never learned about the real gift, because the real gift was never going to be the dinner. Around 10 the next morning, I made coffee I didn't drink and stared at gray sky like it might tell me what to do next. The apartment was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that feels like a verdict. On my dresser, the 2 boxes waited. Dark blue, gold trim, perfectly still. I opened one and let the face catch the weak light. The sapphire winked, politely unaware of the role it had been asked to play. I imagined last night if things had been different. After dessert, when the room was warm with sugar and Cabernet, I would have reached into my bag and placed the boxes on the table. Mom would give Dad that half smile she used to save for holidays. Dad would actually look at me the way he looks at interesting problems. Jason would stare, speechless for once. They would turn the watches over and read the engraving. "For every second you gave me." It would have been true in both directions. Seconds I took, seconds I gave, time braided into something that felt like family. Instead, the boxes looked silly in my hands, two small crowns for a kingdom that didn't exist. By noon, I was at the jewelry store, the same one where the clerk had joked, "Timing is everything," when I placed the order. He recognized me and didn't ask questions. He inspected the pieces, nodded, and said quietly, "Normally customs are final, but a couple came in last week asking for something close. If you're sure." "I'm sure," I said. He processed the return. Just like that, $6,400 moved back onto my card like time waking from a bad dream. I thanked him, walked out into the gray, and didn't look back. When I got home, the calls had multiplied, a hydra of missed attempts. I ignored them until one voicemail began playing on its own because my finger slipped. Dad's voice filled the room. Sharp, embarrassed anger, shaped as authority. "You humiliated us. People were staring. You owe us an apology." The next was Mom's, guilt sweetened to a knife's edge. "I can't believe you'd walk out after we were so kind." Kind. She added that they had to cover the bill, like generosity had been forced upon them at gunpoint. Jason's message came last. Hesitant at first, smug by the end. "I took a joke too seriously. You should lighten up." The chorus was complete. Blame, guilt, denial, like always. I sat on the bed with the empty boxes, the gold trim catching afternoon light, and thought about the first time I tried to buy us peace. I was 10. I brought home a perfect report card, and Dad said, "Why didn't you aim higher?" I bought Mom a necklace with my first paycheck. She said gold wasn't her color. In college, Jason borrowed money he never returned and later called it character building when I skipped inventory week dinners to make rent. A greatest hits compilation of almost love. My phone buzzed again. The screen flashed Dad's name. I let it go to voicemail and lasted exactly 1 second after it started before I hit delete. I didn't need more of his voice crowding my walls. That night, I slid the blue boxes to the back of the dresser drawer, 2 velvet-lidded proofs of intention the world would never see. Later, I took them out again, walked to the trash, and paused. I couldn't make myself throw them away. I wasn't sentimental, I was tired. I put them back in the drawer, empty now, but still heavy. The phone lit up one last time before midnight. I silenced it without listening. The city blinked. I blinked back. The word stray tried to land and missed. Strays survive. Strays learn. Strays stop returning to the hand that pushes them away. I didn't sleep well, but when I did, I dreamed of a table where I was not an audition, of a watch with no hands, of a manager placing a bill in front of someone who finally had to pay. When morning came, the only thing I wanted was coffee and a day with no names in it. The messages kept coming. The watches were gone. The debt remained. Not the financial one. That had been settled cleanly, twice. The other kind. Silence is a skill in my family. It's punishment, leverage, camouflage. The morning after I returned the watches, I made coffee, opened the window, and waited for it to arrive like weather. It didn't. Not at first. My phone looked like it had passed out from the night before. No new alerts, no fresh guilt. The lull made the apartment feel like a church after the service, the air heavy with what had been said and what hadn't. By noon, I gave in and pressed play on the voicemails I'd ignored. Dad first, brisk, clipped, already rehearsed. "You humiliated us," he said. "People were staring. You made a fool of this family. You will apologize." He said apologize like order, not request. Mom's message followed right behind, sugar-knifed. "I can't believe you'd walk out after we were so kind, Mara." Kind. The manager handed us the bill. It was an obscene amount. You forced our hand. Jason's was last, the tone that starts with contrition and ends in smirk. It was a joke. You should learn to take one. 3-part harmony. Blame, guilt, denial. A song we'd been singing since I was old enough to stop. I let the phone rest face down and stared at the ceiling until the plaster looked like clouds. When I picked it up again, the messages had multiplied. Friends of the family checking in, an aunt who only calls when she needs a ride to the airport, my cousin who always wants the tea poured into her text box, not mine. I blocked numbers until my contact list felt lighter by a dozen. At 4 p.m., the first email arrived. Subject line, "Well." No greeting, no preface, just a list from Mom. How embarrassed they were, how the manager made a scene, how I'd overreacted for no reason. Then the part that made me laugh out loud alone in my kitchen. They suspected I'd had another surprise planned, and out of spite, I was withholding it. Out of spite did a cartwheel in my head. My surprise was 2 custom watches I'd scraped months to afford. Watches I held against a window like a child thinking the light might tell her what to do. My surprise was a version of our family that could wear time without breaking it. I didn't type a response. I didn't owe the story an edit. By morning, email number 2, long, damp, with family unity and what your father has done for you. Email number 3, just a photo. Mom and Dad from the night of the dinner, the kind of smile that sells furniture, captioned, "You were going to give us something. We're still waiting." I wrote back exactly once. I returned the gift. You don't deserve it. The quiet that followed felt almost polite. 3 hours later, it shattered. An email from Dad, short, efficient, acid. Paragraph 1. I'd disgraced them. People were still talking. Reputation, reputation, reputation. Paragraph 2 was only 2 sentences long and so familiar it almost bounced off. You've always been a disappointment, Mara. Sometimes I think we would have been better off if you'd never been born. It didn't sting. I'd already heard that sentiment. He'd just run it through a different medium. He thought email was a softer weapon than voicemail. It wasn't. It was the same blade with a new handle. I sat very still and let the sentence pass over me like a shadow. Then I opened my contacts and deleted every number with our last name. I blocked them on every app I use for pretending the world is small. I went into old voicemails and erased everything, even the fake sweet birthday songs, because none of it felt like a thing that ever belonged to me. When the confirmation box appeared, all messages deleted, something unclenched inside my chest. Not triumph, not grief, just a clean edge where the tangle had been. The weekend arrived wrapped in ordinary light. I cleaned the apartment, bought myself flowers that clashed with nothing, walked to the farmer's market and let the smell of basil and rain do the work my family never managed, make me feel like I was part of something simple and good. They think silence is a weapon. For me, it was a room with a door I could close from the inside. Monday morning, the quiet broke the way glass does, sharp and sudden. A new email from Mom, subject line, "Well again," as if the first had been a rehearsal. She never mentioned the toast from Jason, never named the word stray, just logistics of humiliation, the manager, the bill, the eyes of strangers. Then, Jason thinks you had something else planned. If you really bought something special, don't withhold it out of spite. Of all the sentences in all our years, that one told the truth the loudest. They weren't asking about me. They were asking about what they thought they were owed. I didn't reply. By noon, a second email. By 2, a third. The cadence of a guilt metronome. When I finally responded with the line about the watches, the 3-hour quiet almost fooled me into thinking the storm had shrugged and moved on. Then my father's name lit up the header. He went straight for the artery. You've always been a disappointment, Mara. Sometimes I think we would have been better off if you'd never been born. I read it twice, then again. Not to memorize it, to confirm that the invisibility I'd felt for 30 years had finally put on a name tag. I set the phone down, stood at the sink, and washed a glass that wasn't dirty. The water ran warm, steady, indifferent. In the window's reflection, I saw my own face and recognized it without the costume. I didn't look like a person waiting for permission to breathe. That night, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and slept. When I woke, I expected my old reflexes to wake up with me. Explain yourself, smooth it over, make a plan to fix it. They didn't. I made coffee, stood by the window, and watched the city make its own weather. The silence didn't feel like a void anymore. It felt like space. Around noon, I opened my laptop to pay a bill and noticed the blue box icon of my email bouncing. There were 4 new messages from friends who don't know my family well enough to guess what happened. You okay? Your mom posted something weird. I typed, I'm okay. Don't engage. They didn't. Mid-afternoon, Jason texted from a number I hadn't blocked yet. Answer? It blinked on my screen for a long time and then disappeared. 10 minutes later, another. Dad didn't mean that. He was angry. Then, you overreacted. Let's talk like adults. The words adult and overreacted sitting next to each other would have been funny if they hadn't been so old. I blocked him. The quiet returned, a soft animal curling beside me that I didn't have to feed with apologies. In the evening, I walked to the corner store and bought the good wine. The clerk carded me with the distracted habit of someone who has been told they should. I laughed. He smiled back, a nothing moment that felt like a reset switch. Back home, I opened a window and let October air push through the apartment. I watched the curtain breathe. I sat down at the table, pulled the 2 blue boxes from the drawer one last time, and thanked the past version of me, who thought love was a thing you could prove with engraved metal. Then I put the boxes away and made a different proof. I cooked myself dinner and ate it while it was hot. I texted a friend a joke about how gratitude shouldn't require a receipt. I turned off my phone at 10 and slept an entire night like it belonged to me. In the morning, the charger cable hung from the side of my bed like a lifeline I didn't need. I made coffee with both hands, and when the phone finally lit with a new subject line, well, I laughed, and the sound didn't echo. The thing about silence is it changes shape depending on who holds it. In their hands, it was a punishment. In mine, it was proof I had finally put something down. Thursday night started with a knock. Soft, hesitant. The kind of knock people use when they're not sure they're welcome. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach twist. Jason. He stood in the hall with a grocery bag in one hand and that same crooked grin he's had since he was 5. The one that always looked like an apology trying to find its way out. For a moment, I considered pretending I wasn't home, but he saw the shadow move under the door, and that tiny hesitation gave me away. "Mara," he said, voice low, "I just need 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I opened the door halfway. He didn't cross the threshold, just stood there holding the bag like an offering. "It's from the diner," he said. "Burgers. Fries. You used to love that place." He placed it on the counter before I could stop him, the smell of grease and nostalgia filling the room. "Can I sit?" I didn't answer, but I didn't stop him either. He sat at the edge of a chair like a man who wasn't sure if the ground would hold. "They're not okay," he said. "Mom's been crying. Dad hasn't said much since that email." I stayed standing. "Good." Jason exhaled through his nose, rubbed the back of his neck. "You don't have to forgive them, but you should know. Dad feels bad. Not bad enough to apologize, I assume." Jason hesitated. "You know how he is." "Yes," I said. "That's the problem." He looked around my apartment like he was trying to memorize the life I'd built without them. He tried to dispute the restaurant charge with the bank, he said finally. "Said you tricked him into paying. They froze the refund for 2 days before they realized what happened. He lost it when they told him he couldn't reverse it." I almost smiled. "So, he tried to steal my refund?" Jason winced. "I told him he was wrong, Mara. I really did." "Congratulations," I said softly. "You get a medal for telling the truth once." He didn't rise to the bait. When he said those things about wishing you'd never been born, Mom lost it. She cried, said she'd never forgiven herself for everything after you were born. That made me pause. "What do you mean?" "She had postpartum depression. Bad. She didn't want another kid after me. Dad pushed, said one child wasn't a family. When you were born, she didn't know how to connect. Every time you argued or stood up to him, she said it felt like fighting herself." The words landed somewhere deep, not as an excuse, but as a strange kind of answer. My mother's silence had always felt like absence. Now I knew it was fear. Jason looked at me then, really looked. I made the toast because I wanted to make him laugh. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. "You never do," I said quietly. He nodded. "I know, that's why I came." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small white box. Inside, a gold keychain shaped like a heart. On the back, engraved words, "Forgive me when you can." He set it on the table between us. I had it made the day after. I wanted to send it, but figured it would mean more if I showed up. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. The air smelled like fries gone cold. "Mom and Dad are planning something," he said finally. "They want to make it right." I laughed, a sharp sound that didn't reach my eyes. "Make it right? How? By deleting their posts?" "They booked a dinner. Saturday night. Same restaurant." He hesitated. "They're calling it a fresh start." "They booked it," I repeated, "and they think I'll show up?" "They want to apologize, face to face." I studied him. "Whose idea was that?" "Dad's," he admitted. "But Mom agreed, said she'd do whatever it took." I crossed my arms. "And you? Do you actually believe them?" He shrugged. "I believe they're scared of losing you for good. That's new, at least." The cynic in me wanted to laugh. The daughter in me wanted to believe him. Those two parts had never been on speaking terms. Jason stood, looking awkward again, like he'd overplayed his visit. "I'll text you the details," he said. "Please think about it." When I closed the door behind him, I caught sight of the grocery bag. He'd left an envelope on top of the takeout box. Inside, a check for $4,116, the exact cost of the dinner. In the memo line, one word, owed. I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or rip it in half. That night, I sat at my desk with the check beside the keychain, both of them glinting in the lamplight. Guilt in two forms, sentimental and financial. At 9:30 p.m., curiosity did what weakness couldn't. I called the restaurant, using a blocked number and a fake name. "Hi," I said. "I'm confirming a reservation under the name Ellery." "Yes, Ms. Ellery," the hostess chirped. "Private room, Saturday, 7 p.m. It's already been paid." My heart kicked once. "Paid by who?" "By you," she said cheerfully. "Same card as last time. We processed it this afternoon." Except I hadn't paid for anything. "Thank you," I said, and hung up before she could ask questions. I opened my email, hands shaking slightly, and there it was, a payment confirmation from the restaurant. $4,216. Time-stamped 2:13 p.m. I froze the card immediately, called the bank, and reported the charge. "That wasn't me," I said. "It's theft." The woman on the other end asked a series of calm, detached questions, her voice the same tone you'd use for car insurance. "It will be flagged for investigation," she said. "Expect temporary holds on your account." When she said fraudulent activity, something inside me went perfectly still, because that was the real word for what my family had been doing my entire life. Emotional, financial, moral. It was all the same crime with different paperwork. Saturday came quietly. The city outside my window looked washed clean by rain. At 6:15, Jason texted, "Dinner's at 7. Please come. It's different this time." At 6:46, "They're already here. Dad's nervous. That never happens." At 7:03, "We saved you a seat." I poured a glass of wine and waited for the urge to pass. It didn't. But I didn't move either. At 7:45, another text. "Please don't freak out. I didn't know Dad used your card. He said he was fixing things." At 8:12, one from Mom. "This was supposed to be a gesture of peace. Don't ruin this." The last one came from Jason again. "You won't believe what just happened." Later, when I read the full string, I could see it like a movie in my head. The waiter setting down dessert. The manager stepping forward, voice low but firm. "The card used for this reservation has been flagged for fraud. We'll need another form of payment." Forks frozen midair, my mother's practiced composure cracking at the edges, my father's face draining of color. Jason's text ended with, "Dad paid the bill, in full. No speech this time." I sat there, smiling into the quiet. Then I picked up the gold heart keychain, turned it over once, and dropped it into the trash. They'd finally paid for dinner, twice. Once with my money, once with their pride. And neither would buy them what they really wanted. Because forgiveness wasn't for sale. For 2 days after the dinner fiasco, my phone barely stopped vibrating. Jason called 6 times. Mom sent long texts that started like apologies and ended like orders. Dad didn't message at all, which was somehow louder than everything else combined. By the 3rd day, the noise died. That's how I knew they weren't finished. They were regrouping. My family never stops when they lose. They rebrand the defeat. Saturday afternoon, I was folding laundry when someone knocked. 3 soft knocks, then a pause, then one heavier, the kind that expects obedience. I didn't have to look through the peephole. I knew that rhythm. When I opened the door, there they were. Mom, perfectly pressed, eyes red beneath concealer. Dad, jaw tight, refusing to look at me directly. And Jason standing slightly behind them, holding a small white box like an offering. No one spoke. For a second, it was almost absurd. The 3 of them standing in my doorway like actors waiting for their cue. Mom cleared her throat. We want to apologize." Her voice shook just enough to sound practiced. I didn't say anything, didn't step aside. The hallway light flickered between us. She kept going, words tumbling out like she'd memorized them on the car ride over. "Things got out of hand. We all said things we shouldn't have. We never realized how much we'd hurt you. We just want peace, Mara, that's all." Peace. The word hung there, too perfect, too polished. Dad shifted his weight and finally spoke. "It's time to move on. You've made your point. Don't act selfish about this." There it was, the real voice of the man I grew up with, the apology folded neatly inside a command. I almost laughed. Instead, I leaned against the doorframe and studied him. "You broke into my bank account. You used my money to pay for another dinner, called it peace, and then humiliated yourselves when the manager called you out. And you think I'm being selfish?" Mom stepped forward, eyes wide, tone fragile. "Please, we just want to fix this. Don't twist everything." "Twist?" I said. "You've been twisting my words, my life, since I was old enough to talk back." Jason swallowed hard. "Mara, I told them not to use your card, I swear. Dad cut him off sharply. "Enough! She's enjoying this. You always did love playing the victim." Something in me snapped, quietly but permanently. "You're right," I said. "I do love it, because being your victim finally taught me what freedom feels like." They stared, unsure if it was sarcasm or confession. Maybe it was both. The white box in Jason's hands trembled slightly. He held it out like a peace treaty. "We brought something for you. It's from all of us." I didn't move. "Keep it." "Mara." "No." I met Jason's eyes. "You already bought your forgiveness. Twice. You just didn't read the fine print." Mom's composure cracked then, her voice rising. "You don't mean that. Family doesn't throw each other away." I smiled, small and cold. "Then you should have thought of that before you left me out in the cold and called me a stray." Dad's face twisted, the kind of expression people make when pride and rage share the same seat. "You're being dramatic," he said, his voice climbing. "You think you're better than us? You're not. You're nothing without this family." There it was, the truth, raw and familiar. The same tone he used when I was 16 and got accepted to a college he couldn't brag about because it wasn't his choice. The same tone that made me stop sharing good news. And for the first time in 30 years, I wasn't scared of it. "Then I guess it's a good thing I finally learned how to be nothing," I said. I started to close the door, but Mom stepped forward, her hand on the frame. "Please, Mara, we're trying. Don't do this." "You're not trying," I said. "You're rehearsing. You want forgiveness for show. I don't perform anymore." Dad's voice came one last time, sharp and final. "You're not part of this family anymore. You made that choice." I smiled. Finally, something we agree on. And then I closed the door. The hallway went quiet. Their footsteps echoed for a while. Mom's hurried, Dad's heavy, Jason's reluctant. When the elevator doors finally closed, the silence that followed was cleaner than any apology could have been. That night, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window, watching the city lights blink against the dark. I tried to replay what just happened, but the memory kept dissolving into a feeling instead. Relief. It didn't even feel like victory. It felt like finally putting something down after carrying it so long, your hands forgot what empty meant. I opened my laptop and scrolled through old photos. Birthdays, holidays, blurry candids I used to keep out of habit. Dad scowling at something off camera. Mom smiling in that tight, careful way she did for company. Jason with his easy grin and borrowed confidence. One picture stopped me. Me at 12, holding a science fair trophy, while Dad stood next to me, distracted by his phone. Mom's hand rested on my shoulder, half there, half not. Jason's arm draped around me, pretending pride. I remembered how proud I'd felt then, not because of the trophy, but because I thought maybe, just maybe, that photo would change something, that they'd look at it one day and see me. They never did. I deleted the entire folder, every pixel, every smile. A week later, the phone buzzed again. Jason. He texted, "I'm sorry for how that went. They shouldn't have come." I ignored it. 2 days later, Dad wants to talk again. Blocked. Another week, Mom's not doing well. Please, just call. I turned the phone off. Some lessons take years. Others click into place all at once. That night, I slept through till morning. No nightmares, no dreams, just sleep, clean and deep. When I woke, the first thing I felt wasn't sadness, it was space. Sunday afternoon, I cleaned the apartment. I even vacuumed, something I hadn't done since the day after the dinner. The air felt lighter with every bag I filled. Old receipts, expired cards, the last traces of the life I'd spent too long defending. Then I saw it, the small white box Jason had tried to give me, still sitting by the door where I'd dropped it after closing it in their faces. I hadn't realized he'd managed to wedge it inside before leaving. I picked it up. The paper was smooth, the tape still sealed. For a second, I considered throwing it straight into the trash. But curiosity is a stubborn thing. I peeled the tape and lifted the lid. Inside wasn't jewelry, or a trinket, or a letter, just a folded piece of paper. It was a photo, a copy of the same science fair picture I'd deleted a week earlier. On the back, in Mom's handwriting, were 4 words. "We did love you." Did. Past tense. I slid it back into the box, closed the lid, and set it on the counter. Then I turned off the light and went to bed. That was the last time I heard from any of them. And for once, the quiet didn't mean punishment. It meant peace. Months passed. Not the kind of dramatic passage you notice in movies. No calendar flips, no montage. Just small, ordinary days quietly stacking into a life. The silence didn't ache anymore. It breathed. I got promoted at work, bought new curtains, stopped glancing at my phone every time it buzzed. Sometimes, when I caught my reflection unexpectedly in a shop window or the chrome of a subway door, I'd almost smile. I didn't look like someone waiting to be forgiven anymore. I didn't hear from my family. Not one call, not one message. The part of me that used to crave that absence now understood it for what it was. Peace dressed as distance. Until one afternoon in June when I got a text from a mutual friend. Jason's birthday, a surprise party. Everyone's invited, she wrote, oblivious to what everyone meant in my family. I almost ignored it. Then curiosity, that old reckless thing, nudged me. I told myself I'd stop by early, before the crowd, just to say hello. To the friend, not to him. The restaurant was small, noisy, filled with the kind of laughter that pretends it never hurt anyone. I walked in, scanned the room, and froze. Mom, Dad, Jason, sitting together at the long table near the back. For half a second, I considered turning around, but Jason looked up at that exact moment and saw me. His eyes widened, surprise melting into something I couldn't read. Relief, maybe, or guilt. Mara, he called too loud. Heads turned. There it was, the choice. Run or stay. I took a breath and walked over. He stood quickly, awkward smile plastered on. I didn't know they'd be here, he whispered. Of course you didn't, I said. Mom's face flickered. A flash of guilt, then composure. Dad stayed seated, pretending to scroll through his phone. Jason cleared his throat, trying to fill the silence. I'm glad you came, he said, genuinely this time. It's good to see you. And it was strange. It was good, in a detached, distant way, like visiting the ruins of a place that once felt like home. The night passed in small, polite fragments. People brought cake, took photos. I didn't join them. I lingered near the window, watching my reflection instead of the candles. Later, Jason approached me again, quieter now. Can we talk? We stepped into the hallway. He looked older, tired around the eyes, shoulders heavier. You were right, he said, about all of it. I didn't say anything. I spent years trying to make Dad proud. I don't even know why anymore. You, standing your ground. It woke me up. I stopped chasing his approval. It was the first honest thing I'd ever heard him say. I nodded. Then it wasn't all wasted. He gave a small, crooked smile. He still won't admit he was wrong, you know. Of course not, I said. He thinks silence is power. It's really just cowardice in a nicer suit. He laughed quietly. Mom wanted to talk to you. She keeps saying she's sorry, but I think she's just scared. She should be, I said. Not of me, of staying the same. Before I could walk away, Jason touched my arm. They've been softer lately. Maybe they've changed. I looked at him, that small boy I used to protect, hiding behind the man who still wanted to believe in miracles. People don't change, I said. They adapt. They pretend until the next storm hits. He didn't argue. He just nodded, as if he'd already learned it the hard way too. I was about to leave when I heard my mother's voice behind me. Mara, wait. She and Dad stood by the door, waiting like they had rehearsed it. I turned slowly. What do you want? Mom's hands twisted around each other. We didn't mean what we said. We were angry, hurt. We just want things to be peaceful again. Dad's jaw clenched, his tone low but sharp. We don't want you acting selfish about it. We're trying to move forward. That word again. Selfish. It almost made me laugh. They'd weaponized it for years. Anytime I wanted boundaries, it became selfishness. Anytime I wanted space, it became disloyalty. I met their eyes, one after the other. You don't get to decide what peace looks like, I said. Dad's voice hardened. We're your family. And I'm done pretending that means something. Mom looked like she might cry, but no tears came. She whispered, Can't we start over? I thought about it. Really thought about it. All the years, the dinners, the voicemails, the messages, the way love had always felt like an invoice waiting to be paid. No, I said. You don't start over with people who never showed up the first time. Dad's face turned red. You think you're better than us? No, I said softly. I just stopped trying to prove I wasn't worse. And that was it. No shouting, no grand exit. I just turned, walked out of the restaurant, and let the door close behind me. Outside, the air smelled like rain and car exhaust. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just breathed. By the time I reached my apartment, the city had gone quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't ask anything of you. I poured a glass of water, set it on the table, and caught my reflection in the window again. The same face, the same eyes, but lighter somehow. Maybe freedom doesn't come as a single moment. Maybe it's a series of small decisions. To leave the dinner, to send the email, to not pick up the phone, to walk away when the apology comes dressed as manipulation. I turned off my phone. No parting words, no second chances. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval, their forgiveness, their next storm. I was waiting for nothing. And it felt incredible. The city outside blinked its quiet lights. The world moved on, and I finally did too.